The next step is they can start investing before they're 18, before they're 21, right? So if we have these part-time jobs, which I've been working since I was 15 years old.
Summer youth employment programs and all of that.
Exactly.
Even birthday money.
Exactly, right? Or it's like, oh, grandma came over, here's, 20. The $1 million might not seem practical right now today, but in 20, 30 years, it's just like, I'm so glad I put that $25 in that Roth IRA because now, I'm a millionaire.
Yes.
And so that's what I call my audience, future millionaires. It's not as insurmountable as long as we take those small steps that are strategic, but also aligned in what we want for our future.
Hello, and welcome to the Know Your Rights Camp podcast. I'm Mariela. Super excited to have a New York City native in the building. This is Melissa Jean-Baptiste.
Hello.
Haitian American, retired New York City high school teacher, but she is the Beyonce of finance right now. Some of you might know her as the author of So This Is Why I'm Broke, or through her online persona of Millennial in Debt. But she is trailblazing financial education right now. Melissa, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you. That was an amazing introduction. I love it. Thank you so much for having me.
So I want to get right into what you've been teaching our students. In your presentation, you told them that what are the top 3 products or services that Gen Zers splurge on.
Yep.
Why was it important for you to start there?
So I think a lot of times when we talk about money, financial literacy, saving, it's always like, don't spend your money, right? And there's no way you need to spend your money if you're going to be really good at money.
Yeah.
But I really want to start off that conversation, and there's a difference in value spending and being a conscious consumer and really navigating your money and building wealth while still spending on things you enjoy. So it's important to start the conversation there so they know and they leave understanding what money is, how to use it as a tool, but also know that they can spend it within reason.
Thank you. So for the folks that pressure the young kids and they tell them, you can afford a house if you don't buy the Starbucks, you can afford this if you don't take the Lyft or the Uber or taxi service. What do you say to folks that try to bring down financial education to something as trivial as a cup of coffee?
I say they're wrong, and I say that they haven't been looking at, one, the state of the economy or just really what's going on a day-to-day granular level, right? When eggs are costing $9, it's not going to be important to focus the conversation on, don't buy that coffee, don't buy the avocado toast. It's really, well, what can I do systemically to make sure that I have the ability to build wealth and those that come behind me also have the ability to build wealth in the same way that their counterparts do as well.
Yeah, and I love how you mentioned building wealth. So that's something that for a lot of our students, because the majority of kids in the camp are teens, middle school, high school. What are some actionable steps that you can tell them right now to build wealth when something like that could feel so insurmountable for them?
Yeah, so my 2 favorite things to always tell the youth, one, you need a high-yield savings account, right? So it's not going to be the same mom and pop savings that our parents say, save your money, and you're earning like 3 or 4 cents. You need to have a high-yield savings account open where you're going to be earning 50 times more than the traditional savings amount, right? So that's our first step. The next step is they can start investing before they're 18, before they're 21, right? So if we have these part-time jobs, which I've been working since I was 15 years old.
Summer youth employment programs and all of that.
Exactly.
Even birthday money.
Exactly, right? Or it's like, oh, grandma came over, here's, 20. You can put that money into a Roth IRA at 15, at 16, at 14, and that money will grow. And so by the time we're entering our 50s, which I know seems very far,
really far,
right? When you're entering your 50s, you're like, I don't really want to work anymore. You have that foundation from when we were 16 of that compound interest, and you have time on your hands, right? So the $1 million might not seem practical right now today, but in 20, 30 years, it's just like, I'm so glad I put that $25 in that Roth IRA because now, I'm a millionaire. And so that's what I call my audience, future millionaires. It's not as insurmountable as long as we take those small steps that are strategic, but also aligned in what we want for our future.
I love that. So for all the future millionaires that are in the building in Kaz Technical High School right now, what do you think our schools are doing? Do you think that we're doing enough for students to learn financial literacy, or should we be doing more?
We should be doing more. I don't think we're doing nearly enough. I really feel like financial literacy courses should be mandated in all high schools across the country in order to graduate, right? So,
in order to graduate, you want it to be graduation requirement.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because like I said, if I had known that I could open a Roth IRA at 16, I'd be having a much different conversation.
Oh, I'd be saving for a house by the time I was 5, right? If I would have known.
Right? And so even with things like a 529, which you can get from birth to grow and save for college, right? To save for school so we don't have to lean on student loans. And so these are things that not only kind of beat inflation, it also really puts us in a place to, in 30 years, we don't have to rely on, oh my God, is Social Security going to be around? We have other strategies that have really made it a safe space for us, and that starts in school. We need the financial literacy courses in school.
I love that you mentioned 529 because I feel like a lot of young folks right now always say, well, what if I don't go to college? Why would I need a college savings account if I don't go to college?
Right.
And so we always try to tell them there are other things you can use a 529 account for.
Yes.
Can you talk to our future millionaires and let them know if you have a 529 account and, college might not be for everyone, what are other things they can do with funds that they might have in a 529 account?
What I love is that a 529 can also be used for trade schools, right? So if you're just like, college might not be my thing, but I want to go and learn this trade or this profession, those funds can still be used at accredited programs as well. And I always tell people the money isn't locked, right? So if it's just like, I don't have the same goal I had when I was 5 or 10 years old, which most of us don't, then I can still take that money. Yes, the government there will be a fee, there will be a penalty, but I can still take that money that was growing much quicker than it would if, it was just under my mattress or things like that. And so I can go and use that money for something else. I can go to use that money to start a business, but at least I have a foundation from when, I was like 2 years old and super cute. And so instead of the toys, give the 529 donations. That's what I always say.
I have that for my daughter. I'm like, don't give her toys.
Yes.
Here's her YouGift code, scan it. Send her some money, right?
I love that. And I always tell my friends, I'm like, capitalize on when the baby's super, super cute and everyone's interested, right? So that's like 1 to 4.
Like, here's $100.
Exactly. Like, oh, let's put that into the 529. And you want to set that on aggressive, right? Because they're 2 years old. And so once we're like 12, 13, you could pivot that into conservative because, I'm getting closer to going to college or closer to needing the money. But from 0 to 12, you let that money grow aggressively. And it's really a way to build wealth and help your child get that future billionaire status way before us, which is what I'm hoping for.
Status.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, we were talking about how you were, your Instagram persona is millennial in debt.
Yes.
And it's amazing to know that she got rid of $102,000 in student loans, y'all. 102, okay? 6-figure student loan debt, and you got rid of it.
Yes.
And I want to talk about student loans because that's such a huge political topic right now.
Yes.
Do you think they're playing with us when we talk about student loan forgiveness? Is it a scam? Is it everyone's getting, everything canceled? Like, what are some of the things that you tell folks when we're talking about student loan forgiveness and what we hear on the news every day?
So student loan forgiveness is absolutely not a scam. It is very much wrapped up in the politics, and it is an election year. So that is the conversation that we're hearing very often. But this administration really has gone above and beyond any other administration when it comes to canceling debt. There have already been millions and millions and millions of dollars forgiven. And so right now what we're seeing is really a way to gain more general population forgiveness, right? So the previous forgiveness has been like if you had the personal you were a teacher or you worked for the city.
Like public sector.
Yeah, your public sector. They had that route. If you had a disability, they had that route. If you went to a school that was a little sketchy, they had that route for forgiveness. And so now the plan that they're trying to do is to really give more people in a general population the opportunity. So this would help 23 million people.
Yes. I hope I'm one of them.
That's all like my brothers too. They're like, is this plan for me too?
Yeah, it's like, when's my turn?
Yes.
I'm happy for y'all, but when's my turn?
Yeah, like tag me in, please. And so it's really important to follow the news, follow the politics of it, but really understand how impactful it's going to be for Black and Brown communities to have. Even so right now, the plan is focusing on interest, which, like you mentioned, I paid off $100,000. I didn't borrow $100,000. I borrowed $50,000 to go to school. And by the time I paid it off, the interest doubled my loans, right?
Hold on, my head is hurting. Hold
exactly.
on. Okay.
The interest was so insane. And so what's really important with this plan is it's focusing on people are like, well, pay what you borrowed. I didn't borrow $100,000, right?
Yes.
So now that this forgiveness plan is focusing on interest, it really gives people an opportunity to at least pay towards the principal, right? To pay towards what they borrowed without having to feel like I paid 100 and now the balance went up $200 more.
Yes.
So that's really what's different from the forgiveness we've seen before. So I want people to just pay attention to what's going on, just
and know
listen
things
carefully.
like principal balance, interest, and know those little keywords.
Yes, it's so important to really building wealth because you understand what's going on and how to get rid of that.
Yes. Something that we hear a lot about in the news also are reparations.
Yes.
And some folks are immediately, you know, the comment warriors in the TikToks and the Instagram are like, rah, 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 rah.
Yes.
What's your opinion on reparations? And do you think we'll actually get to a place in this country where we can have an honest conversation on can we have reparations and who deserves them?
I think we can get to a place where we can have conversations. I mean, you and I can have those conversations, but I think people really get so triggered about helping society, right? So what does that mean? What does that mean for me, right? If I'm pro student loans, but I don't have student loans, like what does that have to do with me? My taxes and this like that. I think we're getting closer to being able to have those conversations because I do think it is very important. And there have been different types of reparations for different ethnicities in our country. And I do really think that the BIPOC community needs to focus on what has been done, what hasn't been done, and how it's impacted those who have been a part of receiving those funds. I think that's where the conversation needs to start and not a what about me? Which is where I think that's where the conversation is
the
at
individualism
now.
thing, it's always what about me?
It's the same thing with student loan forgiveness. It's just like, well, I didn't take loans, so why did my taxes go through that?
Right.
And I'm like, well, you know, if we looked at it that way, my house didn't catch on fire, but I'm paying taxes towards the fire department.
Right.
I don't have a child, but my taxes are paying towards public schools, right? We can't just pick and choose. I don't want my taxes to help.
Yes.
We are a society.
Yes. Yes.
Right. And so that is what our tax is for, is to improve and empower our society. And so reparations and student loan forgiveness are important ways to uplift and improve our society.
Yes. I love that because Colin and Nessa are always talking about like our collective conscience. And I think that's something that we need to strengthen more and more because there's so many things that can divide us. And I love that you mentioned that. So in the presentation, you also mentioned like racial capitalism.
Yes.
So how do you introduce that to young folks? Because the entire premise of the camp is knowing your rights, knowing your history. You know, you have the right to be brilliant. You have the right to be wealthy.
Yep.
So how do you introduce a topic like racial capitalism to young folks?
Well, so the beginning of the presentation, we're talking about consumerism, right? Which is a part of capitalism, supply, demand, you know, things that we value. And then we pivot into what does it mean to be financially defensive and why do we need to be financially defensive?
See, that's a brand new term for me.
Yes.
Like you said financially defensive.
Yes, right? You need to have your defense up financially. And that means things like financial literacy, understanding what it means to save, what it means to invest, what it means to budget, right? And looking forward, compound interest, what it looks like in 20 years. And so when you know these things, you can build up your financial defense. You can create your budget. You can create a savings plan. You can create a debt management plan to pay off your loans. And in doing so, you're really empowering yourself and protecting yourself from racial capitalism. And that's things like unfair bank fees for Black and brown people in comparison to their white counterparts. And that's things like the wealth gap, the gender wealth gap, all of these things where it's just like, oh, I have a disadvantage because I'm a part of a marginalized group, but I need to understand these things and I need to know that they're going on so I can really take action, and not only as an individual, but collectively as well, right? And I talk about things like collective bargaining. I talk about things like legislation. We need to have those conversations to take action so that we're able to say, hey, you're not going to just, you know, sit up here in my face and play around talking about, no, there's no such thing as, you know, racial capitalism. Everyone has a fair shot.
Yes.
Where when you look at executives and CEOs in the country, 86% are white men. Right. And they're making the most money. They're able to buy homes. They're able to get into real estate. And
they know tax laws and
to
other
pay less
terms
taxes.
that we don't know.
Exactly. And so being financially defensive means arming yourself with the information so that you can take action to collectively and individually protect yourself.
I love that. What do you think is the number one thing that anyone that reads your book will walk away with? I know reading, that's part of, you know, having that defense that you're talking about, but someone's reading through your book. What is the number one thing that you want them to take away when they pick up So This Is Why I'm Broke?
That they can start where they're at And I think that's what was so important for me at 25 years old, where I was embarrassed. I had 2 degrees and I couldn't move out of my parents' house. I didn't have a savings account. I didn't know how to buy a home, but I was trying to buy a house in New York. I don't know why. I didn't have a savings account, right? And so doing all of these things and not really understanding what's the next step, when I was embarrassed. And so when you read my book, it's important for you to know, like, everyone's kind of figuring it out. You don't have to know everything, the mistakes you made. I start off my book talking about how I charged a pair of Coach sneakers and my account went in the negatives and I had to call home. It was my first week of college.
And you got hit with an insufficient funds fee and then another one.
And I had to call home and tell my dad. I was so embarrassed. I was just like, can you send me $60? Like, I bought these sneakers, and really navigating that. And then now where I'm just like, I have a 6-figure investment portfolio. I have reached Coast Fire. I'm on track to retire early. That's very different from the 20-year-old girl who is, had insufficient funds. So when you read this book, I really want you to understand, like, okay, I might have a negative account in my balance today, but that doesn't mean in 10 years I won't be, closer to reaching my goals, or that doesn't mean that I won't be able to buy a house or whatever it is. So knowing where we are today and knowing you can do better is what I really want people to understand.
I love that. Thank you so much, Melissa.
Thank you.
This has been so good. I know the kids were so hyped up with your presentation, and I love how there's still a way for them to connect with you, for them to keep getting that information. And we want to thank you so, so much. Melissa Jean-Baptiste, everyone, millennial in debt, author of So This Is Why I'm Broke.
Yeah.
Make sure you follow her on Instagram, and make sure you like us on Instagram and all the other socials too. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for watching us. Make sure you follow us on our social media, Your Rights Camp, and that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, Know Your Rights Camp. And check out our website, knowyourrightscamp.org, if you'd like to continue to support. And see you next time.